Slingshot number, no idea. It's been a while, but we had a very powerful co-creation, and I wanted to share it today. And that has to do with tethering and how this slingshotting and how tethering actually works, and some really good examples of how we can use it to communicate to other people. We can also use the language to understand better what we're actually trying to create. And so there's this idea of tethering, and like, what is tethering? And tethering starts with loyalty to self. So both Chelsea and I have made a commitment to remain loyal to ourselves. And then Chelsea used the terminology for the outcome. Like, why do you do that? Why do we even want to do that? And for her, it was permeability of heart. And so this is the idea of tethering to each other. We're both tethers to help slingshot ourselves. But where are we slingshotting ourselves to is very important. And it's the discovery of self. And one of the things that came in a discussion that I had today with a new friend, which, well, not really a new friend, but somebody that I've connected with, and just a resonance from an old pattern. And it comes from, well, I'll just go back and tell you, it comes from, actually, let me stop and let Chelsea add anything to that I might have missed or she wants to share.
I want to be clear about what permeability of heart means, as far as how I define it, and everybody can define it their own way, but permeability is the ability to have things flow. So it's not just flowing in, it's also flowing out. So if you find yourself shutting down, that's not flow. If you find yourself not receiving, only giving, that's not flow. So permeability is a very, in an essence, the balance of both ebb and flow.
Yes, and I see it would be much more closer to finding souls connecting with each other rather than minds and stories.
Yes.
Connecting with each other. It's actually finding the depth within ourselves.
Yes.
And the depth we find is this place that we find is at the soul level, and not in these constructed ideas or patterns that we've created with our psychology.
Right.
And that's kind of where I was going to go with this, is that what this person brought to the conversation was they were relating about trying to communicate to other people what they wanted to bring in relationship, and then where to find these people. So it was, so I'm just going to give you my example of how I completely related with this. I knew that this is where I wanted to go many years ago. And I had started this idea of truthing partners. And so, a girlfriend at the time needed to be a truthing partner because I just wanted the truth. I wanted somebody to tell me what was actually going on inside their world. And so that was kind of a no-brainer, but it's very hard to communicate that to people because they're like, what the hell does that mean? Because everybody's kind of out there looking for the thing that they think that they're looking for. So I'll say that what I would struggle with, and this person was talking about their struggle with it, is how do you go out to something like a dating site, this was so applicable to my life at one time. And I'm looking at all these categories that they're offering me to say, this is what I'm looking for. And there was no truthing partners. There was no tethering. It was, I'm either poly, or I'm looking for monogamy, or I'm looking for this. And I was like, those don't feel like they fit. And it was kind of like, and so, give an example, it would be like, you would say, okay, like, I'm tired of like romantic or sexual relationships or intimate relationships don't seem to be going where I'm going. So I'm just going to go put out there that I'm in a friend relationship. Okay. Then you go out and then all of a sudden you have this sexual attraction with this person, And then you realize that you have all these patterns coming up and you're like, no, 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 this isn't really what I want. But you've communicated to the other person, hey, I'm sexually attracted to you. And then they're going like, oh, okay, well, we met on a dating site. And so, you have to keep trying to keep this thing going that we agreed because of, where we met and blah, blah, blah. And if that's getting confusing to you, good, because that was my mind. And that's what I'm trying to communicate to you is the confusion that happens and I'm recognizing right in myself, because this has been a very, very powerful connection and co-creation for this message to come out, and I'm excited to talk about it. In that, it's like, how do you communicate with people? Well, the thing is when we're trying to categorize into those things, we're trying to categorize into things, uh, these mind created categories. I'm either poly, I'm either monogamous, I'm all these things, and it's like those don't feel right to me. I don't know exactly what it is that I'm looking for, and maybe some people are actually looking for those things. And if you are, go do that. Like, that's not what this is about. This is about the idea of slingshotting and using other people, meeting other souls to basically break through the mind stories, to get to the deeper essence of who we truly are. And that is what tethering is about. Go ahead.
I was just want to add that the the tethering, it's definitely for people that are wanting to push into the larger areas of infinity that exist within all of us, and the categories that we get lost in, whether that's a sexual orientation, religion seems to be a big one. Everybody wants to group up in their respective religion classes, politics, right, left, this back and forth. And this is above all of that fray. It's beyond there. It's beyond that. So you're wanting to tether with people that do think differently and have different ideas and different things in life that have shaped them. So I just kind of wanted to put that in there, that
Yes,
you're not looking for somebody who thinks like you do.
right. Very good. Very good. You're not, yes, that's kind of like the tribalism, the categorization. As long as you call yourself insert label here, you've got it. You're in that mode. So the idea of tethering is beyond that, because you're saying, well, wait a minute. If you're saying you just want to be friends, or you just want monogamy, or you want polyamory, or you want whatever these things are, tethering is being open to whatever might show up and then dealing with it. So let's just say that I go out and inside myself, like a monogamous relationships feels really good. But I don't know, like, what I want to get rid of. That's what it really is. It's lightening the load. I'm sorry, I'm going to come back here a little bit to tethering is more about removing the psychological patterns that we have. And this person brought, and I studied this just a little bit, so I don't, it's attachment styles. And that's just another way of framing patterns of psychological behavior. So this person was wanting to deal with that attachment style. Like, they had found that was their pattern, and they're like, I just don't want to be pulled back into that attachment style. Well, this is what tethering is exactly for, because that's what came to me, is like, that's the exact thing. So the patterns for me when I was studying it, it was codependency and narcissism. And I had done a lot of work on, being real with myself, finding the arrogance of the narcissistic aspects of my personality, and then dealing with the other side of it, which was the codependent aspects of my personality. So when I discovered those kind of those psychological patterns in my world, it was like, I knew they were affecting my ability to the thing that I was looking for, but I didn't have people that would stick around and wanted to, like, that's always the main thing with tethering is we don't know where our relationship is going. We have a commitment. Our commitment is to tethering. Our commitment is to loyalty to myself and loyalty to herself. So what are we doing? And I can tell you that that's the beautiful thing about the relating that we've done is it's not been flowy or, we've gotten into situations where we're both have these emotions that come up. But the nice thing is we seem to prove that we're on the same path, that we want the same thing. We want permeability of heart. We want tethering. We want to continue to grow by using our feedback. And that's the other aspect about tethering is you have to be able to give conscious feedback, but you need to be willing to take feedback. And we've been doing that. We had very different patterns in our relating sexually from this world. And we both weirdly found that she took a different path through life until we met each other, and I took a different path. And then it's like, okay, well, we're together, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, that we've attracted to ourselves this the friction that we've wanted to see what that other world looks like and to look through that experience and understand. And again, we're just opening consciousness to experience more of this world and to be able to handle more of this world with each other. So tethering is, so if you find yourself categorized, it doesn't mean, you could study attachment styles. You could study control psychology like I did. There's other ways that people, and language that people say, well, I'm like this. And it's like, that's your psychological pattern. Then you might say, well, it gets in the way, or it seems to come up in relationship. And that's the thing that I want to remove from my life. That's exactly what tethering does is by starting with a foundation, and the foundation is loyalty to self.
Loyalty to self, honesty with self.
And yeah, you have to be it's self-awareness. You have to be able to look at yourself and there's just times where, we're just talking about this is that, but you want to share about sharing with me, like being nervous about sharing with me by thinking that you got something wrong.
Yes.
So unpack that a little bit.
Well, part of developing our nonverbal communication skills, which is our being good stewards of our energy, our thoughts, and then also leaning into things that fear us and pushing through, like, oh, should I give him this feedback? Am I wrong? And so there's two things that are going on there, or multiple things going on there. You're developing trust with yourself. It's okay to get it wrong because you've got a truthful person on the other side that's going to be like, okay, let me think about that. Check, 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 check. No, doesn't resonate. Oh, okay. Well, let me think about this for me. So it gives you that opportunity to, okay, maybe the feedback was actually meant for me, but it needed to come out loud, bounce off of another person so that I could see something that my blind spot prevented me from seeing. So there's all these beautiful ways that we're able to grow both ourselves, each other, and it not be um, games. Games are fun. Frisbee is fun. Card games are fun. Playing with our emotions is not fun. We want to share in our emotions. We want to understand our emotions, each other's emotions. What are these feelings? Let's write about it, sing about it. But they're not. It's the game of playing with emotions is it's a dead end game, and it's very hollow, and it's very lackluster, so that you're going to be feeling
It's
that.
just a story.
Yeah, it's a story. And so I
Yeah, and so I'm just going to go back to one of the things that you shared was that you were sharing about, like, the first thought you'll have is, am I just going to be sharing with him bullshit?
right. Is this my bullshit that I'm trying to give feedback? Oh, let me give you some feedback. And that's where we have to be conscious of our feedback. So I do a little check-in with myself. Okay, is this Chelsea bullshit? Defensiveness, that kind of thing? Or is this good, honest feedback? Okay. And so I do that little check-in. Eventually, I hope to be able to strengthen that trust muscle and that non-verbal language that I'm talking about, or that energy, the resonating aspects of ourselves, um, to where I don't have to necessarily, I'll know right away. I'll know, is this my bullshit? Is this any bullshit of mine? I don't have to question it so much. But there's these training wheels that I've got going on, because uh, I'm eliminating old programs that I know, because my conscious got shown light onto what was unconscious. And so those are the old programs that I'm slowly but surely shining light on, and, basically control alt delete. So, but I'm not there just automatically yet. So I do is this my shit, or is this good feedback?
So it's basically, it's
Sorry.
practice. It's like life practice. And so the example is that, so I use the term emotion for things, a sensation that I don't know exactly where it's coming from. And then a feeling is a sensation that I can go, okay, I know where this is coming from. So I'm going to go back and use that definition with an example. It's like, yeah, I might not do the thing that she wants me to do. She has an adverse emotion, and she's like, well, I just don't think that blah, blah, blah. She'll just tell me something that she thinks straight from, without the filter, just letting it come out without doing all the diagnostics she was just talking about. She just lets it come out. And then, the numerous times she's come back to me and said, oh my gosh, like, that wasn't for you, that was for me.
Yeah.
But it's not a matter that she's trying to get rid of that, or I'm trying to get her to stop doing that. Because the way that I look at it is, everything that she gives me, each piece of feedback, whether it's for me or not for me, is for me. It was the exact thing that needed. And then it's my bullshit meter to go, oh, okay, this isn't about me. I know exactly where I'm grounded, and there's nothing for me here. And there's a reason that I also want her to never put a muzzle on. Like, I always want her, if she needs to, like, just regurgitate whatever's coming out of her mind from that emotion, even if it is, like, just total bullshit in her world, let's just pretend that that's an ability or that's something that's there. So many times she will say something, and my first reaction is, no, that's not for me. And then all of a sudden, I let it sit with me for a minute, and I go, wait a minute. I remember a pattern. I had this pattern of behavior before, and it's like, and it wasn't like these giant ahas or whatever else. And that's what we're talking about. At this point, her and I don't have we don't have blowout fights or, real high emotional drama moments. We do have little drama moments, but we're much more subtle. The things we're working on now, the distillation of what we're trying to experience, is down from these big expressions of repressed emotions and the way that we want. We're down to the point where these things are very subtle and they're very nuanced. So it is like, I rely on her, and I hope, And I'm sure that there are times, and I know there have been times when I have had words come out of my mouth and I'm just like, oh, goodness gracious, that was not meant for you. And that was not like, that was something that I should have held back. But I shouldn't have held it back. That's the irony, because then Chelsea gets to go. She gets to do it's like having it's like always have, like, to be in the flow is to always have a metronome that is always in sync.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you get outside feedback. Let's say she gets outside feedback from James, that he throws it off. And then she might, for just a second, that metronome goes, wait, let me think about this. I'm out of harmony. What is that fucker doing? Like, what is he trying to prove to me or whatever else? And then she just goes, and I've seen it. I can see the backbone. That's what I always think of it, is like that vertebra of being grounded, and you can see it, and she just like, this one's not for me, man. And then her metronome just can go back to didn't 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 didn't. And she used a term earlier which I love, and this is exactly what this has to do with: resonance. This has to do with balance and harmony, and that's what we help each other do. And that's paradigm A stuff, is what she was talking about, where you create drama. And oftentimes people create drama just to create drama. They're actually just creating stimulation.
Yeah.
Like, they are just like, let me work on something emotionally. Then I'm like, oh, I need to go take this out on the other person.
Right.
They take it out on the other person. And really what they're doing is, I just want somebody that can handle me in whatever situation that I'm in. It's like, just give away all of your responsibility, all your accountability, and you make the other person responsible for your connection.
Everyone, I think, has gotten very programmed in the emotional aspects of just going into these labels or these modes and classifications. And so everything else gets locked down, and they're either going to be creating drama in their own personal relationships. If there's no drama there, they will go and find that drama through the television, through a reality TV series, wherever it is. People will go and gravitate towards that because that's what's been created as a comfort zone. The thing is that it's okay. Comfort is something that I think is in our nature. We like the comfort of each other. This is part of the attraction James and I have with each other, is that we have um, this quest for being really madly, deeply in love with our soul, with our own spirit, and having that in harmonics. And we found each other wanting to do that. So this is the comfort that kind of helps us in our bonding, because he's doing it, I'm doing it, he's doing it. So we're boosting each other in our own evolution, self uh, realizations. So we can take that broadly. People getting more and more like aware that they're just going for drama. Well, this can be um, integrated into, okay, let's have fun discovering these dramas within ourselves, but we've got to get honest about it. And then once we can be honest and be like, okay, I'm not going to fear rejection, or the whole world's going to laugh at me because I cried, or I showed my weak side, or my shadow side. A lot of us we're constantly trying to hide aspects of ourselves, and this is why there is so much dishonesty everywhere within everyone, that a lot of people don't even realize they're holding dishonesty because they're lying to themselves. So we can have fun discovering these things about ourselves. And this is part of like not being afraid to go ahead and give that feedback, even though we might fear, I might be wrong, because those are the things that, like a firework display, it shows the two people that are involved, or a group involved, these different perspectives, and then it shows something maybe new for ourselves, whether we own that feedback or not, or the other person. Like I said, I've had feedback for James where it's like, "What? This makes me feel like this when you do this. Oh, wait a minute, this is actually for me." And then versus the other times that it's maybe something that he thinks, oh, maybe I should look at that. So these are ways that we get to help each other discover our own more of our soul, more of ourselves that we're hidden.
Yep. And I like a term that, because I've never been in a relationship where I didn't want it to turn into a marriage or a long-term monogamous relationship. And that started to shift and change. But it wasn't that I was looking for polyamory or in these other kind of relationships. And that's the drama, is what happens in this relationshiping, is labeling labeling the relationship. And really what you're really putting together when you're doing this is, I want to get married, and then I want her to act like a wife, and I'm going to act like the best husband. And it's like, is that the best way to be, or the deepest way to be? And it really is the idea of marriage, where you become whole, the other person becomes whole, and then the truth is we don't know what it ends up. I love Chelsea so much and respect her and understand that she's being loyal to herself, so that if she feels compelled to do something else with her life, I will trust that that's what she needs to do. I know what she's trying to accomplish. I know she is going as deep as she can with permeability of heart. And even if she were to change that, like, that's the thing that I will have to adjust to. And I'm constantly adjusting myself emotionally to that possibility. I mean, because that possibility lies. All the possibilities lie for Chelsea on the other side. Yeah, it's interesting. This could have gone in a lot of different ways. I was just thinking, we just been really enjoying watching shows together, and even in comedy show, we're just watching a comedy show, and one of the characters is losing his mind. He's so mad at himself, and it all starts with a lie. It all starts with not saying something.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and I remember that when I had a different point of view, I would have been like, oh man, I can really relate with him. And now we both just sit there and just go, if you had just said
the truth,
if you had just said the truth, like, everything would be on the table, everything could be good, and you'd be good. And then it's like, even the dramas or whatever, we watch any kind of dramas, you can always see that it is one person or both people trying to create a story for the other person by holding back information that they may not be able to handle, that they may not be able to, and whatever else. And then you see the drama fold out. And a lot of times, even in movies, they will portray the drama and the lie as a virtuous thing. I'm thinking of a newer Sandra Bullock movie where it was like she held this secret and ended up going to prison for it. And then I could see, like, I didn't get it at all, but I could see what the director and the writer were trying to do was try to make her into a martyr and be like, oh, she did this for the other person. And it's like, then you just look at it as the other way where she tells the truth, and you're just like, oh, most likely that person would have been just fine. What was interesting was that person that she lied for. I didn't want to give away a spoiler for this movie, but this person had all kinds of psychological problems because of the lie anyway. And it was living with the weight of that through those years. And the director still tries to make it into a virtuous thing that the main character did to the other person. And it's like, no. If you go and just go backwards and look at it and go, okay, what if she had just had to deal with herself? She did the action.
Mm-hmm.
And she is going to remember the action, and it's like that's where you start with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no virtue that comes from bending the truth.
Right.
You just get delusional reality and these stories that, of it's really a story of codependency. If you want to take the psychological word, it's like
the ego thinking it's clever.
right. Right.
It's not.
Really all it is just moving, all paradigm A is just moving suffering around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, that person can't handle suffering. Well, you don't know. You don't know what they can handle. You know what I mean?
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Well, and then that people they feel virtuous by coming from codependency. They feel as if they're the hero. If they can save people, they can save them grief. And it's like, no, we're here to grieve. We're here to feel the experience of grief. And, and Chelsea was just talking or just went through something where it was like the question came up, and I can't answer this for Chelsea, but the question came up was, is this a mind story that you're trying to work on, or is this practicing turning grief into joy? Mm-hmm. Like seeing grief through the eyes of joy, because that's what ends up happening when you perceive joy or perceive grief in a different way. If you perceive grief as something that you need to avoid at all costs, set up your life to not have to grieve, avoid it completely, get other people to,
affirm that you're what you are, you're right, or the other person's wrong, or, if you've got falling out, that he's referring to a falling out with a family for me. And, me going, well, I need to be responsible, and I need to make sure that I'm accountable for, and just like, because I want complete transparency. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. He had a good point. Are you just trying to, mind story this? Because basically you're dissatisfied with the way that relating, that connection is with that particular family member. And yeah, it basically boiled down to, I'm dissatisfied with. I would love for it to be free flowing or something other than what it is. And so then being reminded of how, we can take grief, we can take any emotion and transmute it into whatever we want. We are magical beings in that way. So you can take grief and turn it into joy. I've turned all that, like, am I missing out on something? No, I had a lot of great memories. Let me be joyful and grateful for that. And that gratitude and joy just started flowing, and then there was no dissatisfaction anymore.
The metronome. So going back just to talk about like how that arose was feeling, and this is just an interesting aspect, was it all started from actually a good feeling, a nostalgic feeling of the joy of experience that they had years ago, and then transformed into grief of what we don't have.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, how can I try to, and then it's like trying to get back in. How do I fix this? Am I not being responsible? Am I doing this? And I was just like, maybe this is just, and I don't tell her what's going on inside of her. That's her to do, but I'm giving her feedback. She's asked for feedback in tethering. And in that, I was like, maybe this is just you you're not satisfied. You want to relive. You want to bring up that old stuff and try to bring it back into possibly the now or into the future. And it's like, no, maybe that joy was to come up. It transformed back into grief, which was, oh, what I don't have. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're making up the mind story, you forget all about the nostalgia and the good thing. And my suggestion and then still allow that nostalgia to come up.
Yes.
Those joyful things. Just because you don't have that relationship with somebody now, it's like, go back. Somebody used that term the other day, poisoning your past. Mm-hmm. Like your mind telling a story. So if you don't, let's just say this is not who she is, but let's just say that she went in a different direction, and she got that she got that joyful feeling of this experience that she remembered, and then it turned into grief, and then she's like, oh, I don't want to experience grief anymore. So she creates all this resentment, or not resentment, but
Avoidance.
repressment, avoidance, to try to create thought patterns so that you'll avoid having those feelings of nostalgia again. And it's like that. I was just going back as Chelsea was talking and thinking about, there were past relationships that didn't work out the way that I wanted them to do, until I switched. I made a switch in my mind that what I would relate that to is being crushed, or feeling crush feelings for somebody. And then you get crushed if the person doesn't like you, or they broke up with you. And then I started thinking, and then once I said, okay, I'm going to be crushed by my crushes, and I'm going to allow that feeling to permeate through me. Then I was able to go back to those relationships that I had, all these stories that, people talk about. Oh, I was in this toxic relationship, and it's like, are you now whitewashing away all the joy because you've repressed and said, oh, this is toxic, so I don't want my mind to think about that? And it's like, no, I went back and was thinking about, and I've actually gone back to old girlfriends. I've apologized, and I've also just, for my side of behavior and that sort of thing, with an open heart, that they didn't have anything to apologize back to me for. Then I was able to open up those pathways, and I see them now in their new marriages, their new relationships, and then I can just be like, ooh. In fact, I just had an interaction yesterday. It was just about a scamming, or somebody got their password taken on Facebook, and I interacted with them. I don't normally interact with them, and I was just like, oh God, it just feels good to interact with that person. We only had a few exchanges. She feels fantastic. I feel magnificent, and I just have this nostalgia that comes back up from the relationship that we had, and there was just so much fun. There was so much funness and so much learning, and this was a very early relationship for me. And I'm so glad that I don't poison my past anymore in order to do that. And it's that's the same thing. I guess we can add on to this, just as this story is wrapping out, that really what all of this is based upon is the now, and is what is here now, and then not living with a mind that's trapped in futuring, and it's not trapped in the past. It is mainly like, what can I experience now? And I can tell you, I'd rather experience joy than it would be to experience grief in a suffering aspect or a way.
One thing I just wanted to plug as like a little thoughtlet or seedlet is just the idea that we can go into any part of our past and change how we perceived it. So, meaning I can go back to, let's say, a 7-year-old Chelsea that got completely devastated because there was a divorce, or the 16-year-old that I got stood up for prom, whatever those trauma, those your mom, your dad, whatever, siblings. And you can go back, and just because we have this ability to understand that our perception, how we process an event, is very different. It could be different from one day or 1 year to the next, one day to the next, based on what's going on and where our head and our thoughts are, right? So you go to a scene of an accident, you take down 4 different people's eyewitness accounts of what happened. They're all going to be different. They all saw the same accident, but they're perceiving through their own aperture. We have this ability to go back into whatever the trauma event was that we perceived as being traumatic for us. And we can go in there and adjust how that was laid down and how we perceived it. It could be massaged.
Right. And it's not pointing to the idea of whitewashing.
No.
The idea is that this is the spiral. I'll just make sure I'm on film. The spiral of consciousness is like, like you deal with something when you're at this level of consciousness, and it comes up and it comes in the form of some kind of uncomfortable emotional state. If you're doing your work, then you process it and you're like, ooh, I put that bagger back in the bag. And then you live and then you live and you spiral upwards in consciousness. And then boom, you hit it again. And then you tell yourself, oh my God, I can't believe this is coming up again. And this was something that my mentor was coached me on, was that when you get to that next level, it will feel as if you're just you're just bringing up and regurgitating a pattern. But what he helped me to understand is that you've done all this spiraling. You've gone up in consciousness, so you're seeing it with a higher lens, a better lens. And so when Chelsea says you can go back and look at that, the idea is you're looking back at it with fresh eyes, a fresh consciousness. You can see it from a bigger point of view. We're not suggesting finding a new delusional reality.
No.
We're looking at it from a fresher, a more like, why did it occur? Why was this going down? Where were we? Where were they? And then all of a sudden, more information. It's like, that's what it literally is. Consciousness is more context. Consciousness means like literally being able to see things.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that we can see things, the more we're on earth, the more that we try to expand our consciousness, we're literally just adding more context. And then it's like, yes, then we put together a better story that shows what occurred from that period. Now there's the other way in paradigm A, where people just hold on to that trauma and they drag it and they tell stories that I'll never get over this. And
sometimes it becomes even bigger and badder, and there's even more smoke, and the flames are 10 times higher.
Well, that's the thing, is there's a traumatic point of view. There's a traumatic event, and this is how trauma works, is there's a traumatic event, and then you'll have triggers that will trigger you into that feeling. Well, what ends up happening is with an unconscious mind, or a way, somebody that's told, you've been educated, that what ends up happening is that piece of trauma, then you start to have other emotions. They're not tied to those. They feel like that. And then then you have all of these different emotional responses coming to the same point of trauma. And then when you go to have conversation with your friend and explain what's going on in your life, your trauma went from this point, and then your mind and your experience has created it into the thing that you always have to talk about. And it is then the baggage that you basically are taking with you to the finish line. It's like, how much suffering can I possibly do before I go? And I'm going to find all the people that will help reinforce the fact that I was traumatized at this point of view. So anyway, I think 40 minutes is
good stuff.
It's good stuff.
Very good stuff.
Yeah, we didn't quite go with the every other day or the daily slingshots, but I think this is exactly what this is about. Is hopefully this is just inspiration to share how being truthful, how powerful this is. The fact that we're moving out of an experience where we need gurus, that we have everything that we need. Mm-hmm. And when we have people, and not saying that conceptual information doesn't help, like to understand how to process grief better than the way that it's shown in paradigm A is wonderful. But the only thing that brings that brings the context and brings it all into the light is the experience. And with tethering, you get all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Signing off.
Signing off.
Have a great, wonderful, magnificent day.